yours to another episode of Beyond the Campfire. If you are new to our podcast, uh, this is Will the Cowboy. I am Steven the Indian. And yeah, we're a cowboy and Indian talking about ghosts, cryptids, conspiracy theories, all the like. So if you're interested in that kind of content, please subscribe, follow us on our social medias at Beyond Campfire Podcast.
Yep.
You can find us on Instagram, X, TikTok, all that good stuff. And yeah, hope you connect with us if you aren't already. So, Will, you actually have a personal kind of dealing with today's topic, don't you?
So, yeah, guys. So today we are kind of doing the same thing Steven did, except for unlike with Steven, at the time of recording this, I have not been to this location yet. I've been to it before, but so to kind of explain it. So Steven, he went to England, saw the Tower of London. Then the week he got back, we released an episode of him talking about what he saw at the Tower of London and like the ghost of the Tower of London. We're kind of doing the same thing, except for at the time of filming this, it is the Saturday before we leave. The wife and I are going on a trip to St. Augustine, and one of the places there that I would like to go visit again is the St. Augustine Jail. And yes, as Steven said, at the end of this episode, I will be giving my own personal encounter because, unlike Steve with the Tower of London, I actually went on a ghost hunt here, and I might have encountered something. Who knows?
Sounds very, very exciting indeed. So, yeah, we've kind of been on a little bit of a ghost run the last few weeks. So, but yeah, okay, cool. So, when do you guys are okay at the time of this recording? Yeah, I guess you guys will be there already, right?
So at the time of the release of this,
At the time,
we would have already left. We're planning to leave Thursday. So the day before this comes out, we would have been leaving St. Augustine. But the week this is coming out, we're in St. Augustine.
Sounds good. Alrighty, well, I guess without further ado, we can dive right into it. So, Will, the cowboy.
Yeah, so I'm going to take you guys back in time to the year 1891 when this jail was built. The company that actually designed and constructed the jail is PJ Poly Jail Building and Manufacturing Company. So you know that they're into building jails when they're called a jail and building and manufacturing company. So the reason why they built a new jail was because this guy by the name of Henry Flagler, okay, he had owned a resort. The old jail used to be near the resort, which, by the way, you can still go to the resort today. It's still operated as a hotel in St. Augustine, Florida. But he was like, I don't like that my resort has these prisoners nearby. I will pay the city to tear down the old jail and build a new jail because I don't want my guests to be seeing prisoners working out in the yard or something, So that's when he hired PJ Poly, and they were based out of St. Louis, Missouri. Came out in 1891. They completed the new jail. The design of this jail and what's really, really cool about this jail is when you look at it first from the front side, the side from the street, it looks like a normal everyday home with a prison attached to the side.
Oh, wow. Okay. That is. I'm assuming that was intentional. So
it was intentional, yeah, because they didn't want to have this big old ugly looking jail, and they wanted to feel like more like, oh, look, prisoners, you're going to grandma's house, you're not going to jail. So yeah, you would probably expect to see this out in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. And it served as the prison it served as their prison until about 1953. They rebuilt a better, bigger facility. I don't know about that one, but I know that this one stopped operating in 1953, and then eventually was sold to a guy by the name of Henry Slim McDaniel. Some name there.
Henry Slim McDaniel.
Yeah, and you could take a guess what Henry Slim McDaniel did with this thing.
What did he do with it? I'm curious.
He made it a roadside attraction.
Ah, of course.
Come see the old jail.
If there's
Henry Slim McDaniel, come see my old jail.
If there's money to be made, someone's gonna shell out some dollar bills somewhere. So
oh yeah,
makes sense.
But then in 1987, that was when it was placed on the National Register of Historical Buildings. So it was protected by that point. And I think that's when the state and all them kind of came in and started running it instead of Henry Slim McDaniel. So I'll now so the way this episode is going to be laid out, I gave you like a little introduction about this place. I'm going to give you a little introduction or a little bit about the layout of the building. And then after that, we will kind of go into the history because yes, it was built in this time and it worked till this time, but this prison had some horrors happen. It might not put Alcatraz to shame. It might, but we will learn about how terrible this prison was. So it was built to house 72 inmates. And then there was also a section that would house 12 female inmates. So it was a man and woman prison.
Oh, yeah, those were pretty unusual at that time, I would imagine.
Yeah. So, okay, so when you're looking at the house, the way this is going to work is you're looking at the house, okay? In the middle is a staircase. That's what divides the north wing and the south wing, okay? So when you're looking at the prison, here's the staircase, and it would be my left. If you're staring out in the distance, it'll be on your left. That is the north wing, okay? On the first floor, you had a section which had maximum security prison, which would be solitary confinement, death row, and the sick ward. As well, that was where you would then see the women's section and the kitchen. So part of working at this prison, and we'll talk about a little bit more because I'm going to talk about the women's section in the kitchen, was that basically because slavery was done with, the way this prison operated was chain gangs, the old chain gangs. So these prisoners will be leased out to farms. One of the roles of the women, because we're on the women's section, one of their roles in the prison was they were in charge of cooking. So they worked in the kitchens.
Okay, so the women were not part of the chain gangs. They were put into kitchen duties. Okay.
They were put into kitchen duties. And they might have had to do this too, but if you were too old or whatever, and you couldn't go out in the chain gangs and sweat on the farms, on the prison farms, and be leased out to Jim, John, Joe down the road, you would work in the gardens of the prison. So they possibly also worked in the gardens.
So the prison guards would say that women belong in the kitchen.
Yeah. Going on back.
Don't get mad at me, women. I didn't say it. The prison guards did. So
now I'm on real quickly because I do have it in my other notes about the conditions of the prison, but I'll kind of go into that a little bit. So in the women's section, there was no plumbing. There was a bucket in the corner.
I was gonna say they would have plumbing at that time, but they just chose not to have any plumbing.
Yep, they had a bucket in the corner. And you ready for me to make it really gross?
What?
So according to my notes, it says that 12 females were housed here. Okay. I've been to the prison, and there's only 2 female cells. They would cram 6 women in each cell.
Shove 6 into each cell.
So imagine, Steven, you are locked in a cell with 5 other guys, and you all have to share one bucket.
Yeah, that's pretty disgusting. My goodness.
Yeah. So that's kind of the first floor of the north wing. The second floor was just where general population was. That's, where you've just got your normal, like a whole bunch of rows of cells, and you've got where people are locked up. It's nothing too fancy about it. Now, when you're looking at the prison, we're going to go on the right side. This is known as the south wing. On the first floor of the south wing, that's where the sheriff had his office and where he worked during the day. And this is where we're going to get a little crazy because guess what was on the second floor?
Okay. So wait, sorry. Say that one more time.
Okay, so he had his office on the first floor of the south wing. Do you know what was on the second floor of the south wing?
Right. What was on the second floor?
So, like I said, there's the staircase you go up, okay? When you get to the top of the staircase, you take a left and you go into general population in the north wing, which is like there's a door and then there's general population. Boom, right there. If you take a right and you immediately walk through this threshold, that's his children's bedroom.
At the jail.
at the jail.
He had his kids that close to prisoners.
Yep.
Golly, I would not be doing that. Yeah.
So and this is just kind of build it in later, because when I talk about my story, my encounter happened in the sheriff's bedroom. So when you walk kind of through the children's bedroom, there's a doorway at the back. You cross through that doorway, which usually is closed off to people, but because I was doing an investigation, I could kind of go in there. That's where the warden's bedroom is, and then that's literally just those two rooms. So yeah, children slept across the way from prisoners.
I would sleep with both eyes open if that were me.
So that's kind of the beginning. That's just kind of like a little bit of layout, a little bit of the beginning history. But now I'm kind of going to get into a bit of kind of what was happening in this prison, kind of give you the idea of the reason why it could be haunted. And we'll also then go into a little bit some of the executions, because there's a really famous execution that, oh man, it's brutal. And then after that, I'll go into some of the ghosts that are encountered there. And then I'll go into Stephen and I encountering a ghost, which never actually happened. It's ChatGPT. But before that, the ChatGPT story, I will then give my encounter and tell you all that story. So.
Sounds good, man. Yeah, I was going to say, just hearing how some of the conditions of the prison are set up, I can imagine, yeah, some pretty brutal things are going to be happening there that would conjure up some spiritual, possibly demonic activity. So, yeah.
So most of these tellings of the mistreatment that happened here at the prison, some of them are based on records, some are based on folklore, and some are local stories that have been just passed down over time. Okay. Now, much of what is recounted in these tales is rooted in the grim realities of the era, because we're in the 1890s and everything, Jim Crow and all that. There are also significant sources that provide insight into the harsh conditions and treatment prisoners experience under Sheriff Joseph Perry. Joseph Perry is the guy we're going to be talking about a lot. Joseph Perry was the sheriff at the time this jail was built, and he actually lost election. I'm trying to remember. It was like at the turn of the century, he lost the election, but then he was reelected back again, and he ran till sheriff till he died in 1920. So he was sheriff for almost 30 years. And he was,
that's a long time.
Yeah, and so from what I understand, this guy was like, let me make sure I got this right, because Joseph Perry was not a guy to mess with. He was very stern. He was very authoritative. He was very much like I'm not going to mess around. Like, you can't. So Joseph Perry, he was, let's see, his name was Charles Joseph Perry. Okay, he was sheriff from 1889 to 1897, and he lost to Silas E. Davis, and Silas E. Davis ran from 1897 to 1901. Then Sheriff Perry got it back in 1901 and ran until 1919 when he died. Yeah. So you want to take a guess how big Sheriff Perry was? Because we're talking about how authoritative this guy was.
6'3", 230 pounds. I don't know.
So this is this is an actual website. This is all the sheriffs of that county. This is their county page on the history of their sheriffs. And they write about Sheriff Perry. By all available accounts, he was known for being a big, bold man at 6'6" and weighing 300 pounds.
Wow. Yeah. Very, very big dude indeed.
Dude was a freaking linebacker. So, imagine you get arrested and you've got to go to this prison, and they're already pretty terrible conditions. But then you got this 6'6", 300-pound guy who's got an iron fist, Doesn't sound very fun. So he was known for particularly making everything strict. It was got to follow the rules or bad things happen. Apparently, he would employ harsh physical punishment as a means to maintain control over the inmates. Prisoners were apparently subjected to whippings for offenses as minor as insolence or disobedience. So you disobey Sheriff Perry, he'll beat you.
He would beat you.
Well, I don't know if he'd beat you. He probably would have the guards beat you, but
I was gonna say the thought of a 6'6", 300-pound prison guard coming over to beat the mess out of me if I'm acting up is
He
pretty
whipped
terrifying.
you.
So, yeah.
So corporal punishment was a common practice at this time, and prisoners in the jail were not exempt from these practices. There are some accounts that suggest that the sheriff had a reputation for being particularly cruel when it came to enforcing discipline. So that kind of goes back to the whole whippings and everything. He's very much like, you don't follow the rules, it's going to be bad for you.
Yeah, no, for sure. Sounds like it. I wouldn't want to be imprisoned anywhere, but I especially would not want to be in prison over here. So.
Oh yeah. Now the jail was also known, as I said earlier, about the female. For example, there was overcrowded conditions, especially during its later years. Inmates were often crammed into cells that offered very little space for movement. It was made of cockqueen stone, which was notorious for getting like, so the building is made of cockqueen stone, and cockqueen stone is known to get extremely hot in the summer and very freezing cold in the winter. And there's very little ventilation in this place. So it's hot. You're elbowed up with your buddies. You're sweating. It's just terrible.
Yeah, it does not sound like a good time whatsoever.
So there's solitary confinement, as I talked about earlier. So solitary confinement was obviously a form of punishment. It is a small, dark cell where inmates would be placed in there for periods with minimal food, or long periods of time with minimal food and water. The isolation combined with the cramped conditions often led to mental deterioration and extreme distress among inmates. And I don't know if I have it written on my ghost, but when we did our investigation here and we've heard stories, I want you to remember solitary confinement, because we'll come back to that in just a second. So besides the physical punishment, there are stories that psychological abuse was enforced. For example, intimidation was also used to instill fear in inmates, and they would face threats of more severe punishment if they didn't comply with the sheriff's orders. So not only were you possibly getting whipped, but the sheriff's like, you don't straighten up, I'm going to hang you or something. You know, like he's going to berate you about it. Apparently there was manipulation. There are accounts of prisoners being subjected to increasingly harsh treatment when they showed signs of distress or attempted to rebel. While medical care was lacking, prisoners were sometimes left to suffer from untreated injuries, wounds, or mental anguish. So not only was the sheriff beating you, he wasn't letting you get a doctor.
Sheesh, I thought the Bell Witch was bad. She'd beat you, but at least you could heal up after that. But
I know.
This sheriff, he's like, nah.
So
No,
the many
no ice for you today.
No, it's like the school nurse, you know, like you come in there, I got a tummy ache. Well, here's a bag of ice. Get out of here.
No,
Yes,
no bag of ice though for us.
At least you had a bag of ice. Oh, anyways, so though many accounts are incidental and based on folklore, there are documented testimonies from former inmates in the local community. They're often described the sheriff and his deputies as harsh and unsympathetic toward the prisoners, especially those awaiting trial or serving time for minor offenses. So even if, like, you know, I don't know, you accidentally hit a guy in a bar, you had a bar fight on accident, you know, you got arrested, you didn't mean to. Well, guess what? You're getting mistreated.
Right.
So no one was safe. Like in this town, you had to be a good boy or daddy would beat you with his belt.
Yeah, wouldn't be the first time that's happened to me. So
No. But imagine if your dad was 6'6", 300 pounds, and he had his body like his men do it.
Yeah, that
and they like whipped you.
That would not be fun. So
some of these testimonies suggest that poorly educated or mentally unstable prisoners were often treated just as harshly as those with more serious offenses. Prisoners who were ill, injured, or mentally ill did not receive appropriate care, which contributed to the overall abuse and suffering within the jail. So let's see. So the public's perception and reputation, it became infamous not only for its brutal treatment of prisoners, but also for the horrific stories that came to light as part of public records. These stories painted a vivid picture of the suffering and cruelty that inmates experienced. The sheriff's actions contributed to the public perception of the jail as a place of cruelty and neglect, further cementing its reputation in local history. In the 1950s, as public awareness grew and concerns about human rights and the treatment of prisoners increased, the jail faced growing criticism. Ultimately, it was shut down in 1953, though its dark legacy continued to haunt the memory of those who had been incarcerated there. And that's basically the treatment of the place, how things were kind of ran. Mostly this all happened under Sheriff Perry. But you can go to this place today and take a day tour. But we're not here for the day tour, folks. We're here for the dark stuff. So I'm going to tell you guys about the executions that happened here. Man. So there's a known total of 9 people executed.
I'm seeing some similarities between this place and the Tower of London, but okay, all right, 9 executions.
So there apparently, one of the guys is there's A.J. Simmons, who was hanged in 1897 for the murder of a man named George Francis. John R. Morgan was hanged in 1901 for the murder of a man named Robert Collins. Jesse Burkett was hanged in 1901 for the murder of a man named Henry Smith. H.C. Farmer hanged in 1912 for the murder of a man named Robert M. Coker. Richard Francis hanged in 1912 for the murder of a man named William C. Gresham. Jack Lee hanged in 1912 for the murder of a man named William C. Gresham. Same as Richard Francis. So Jack Lee and Richard Francis were kind of hanged for the same reason. James W. Evans hanged in 1927 for the murder of a woman named Ruby Ricks. Otis R. Stokes hanged in 1937 for the murder of a man named Thomas L. Seabrook. And then there's Walter Thomas Brown. He was the last guy hanged in 1944. There is a murder that did happen. Okay. So there was a guy by the name, let's see. Yep. Wait, was this the right guy? Okay. So there was actually a guy that was like he was fixing to be trialed and hanged, and they actually found him innocent. However, despite the jury's verdict, the sheriff and his deputies hanged the guy anyways.
Sheesh. There a lot. I mean, just based off everything you just described, though, I was like, these are some pretty brutal criminals doing all these murders and whatnot.
Yeah.
But okay, yeah. Hey, so was hanging the form of execution for all of them, or was it?
Yeah, they were all hanged.
They were all hanged. Got it.
They were all hanged. And I've actually got one guy I'm going to talk about in just a second, because there's 2 hangings. One of them was very, very, very bad. The other one, like I said, this guy got acquitted and they still hung him or hanged him. So that guy, and so in 1924, so this is after Perry, Alec G. Black was an African-American man who was accused of the rape of a white woman, which is a crime he did not commit. After the trial, so there's this whole trial, the jury acquitted him of the charges. So they found him not guilty. So he was free to kind of go. However, despite that, the sheriff and others involved in the case reportedly promised the white community that they would not let the black man go free. Even though he was found innocent and all this, and they promised a hanging, mob mentality persuaded the sheriff and other authorities to public pressure. And they were like, well, we got to do it. So even though this black man had been cleared by legal process, he'd been cleared. He's good. He can go. And in the face of growing pressure, the sheriff broke the law and carried out an illegal hanging.
And racism rears its ugly head yet again.
Exactly. So the black man was hanged without legal authority, despite the jury's verdict of acquittal.
That's awful. I hate hearing stuff like that. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself. But is there a ghost of this guy?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
But
fair enough.
Yeah, so
I was about to say, if anybody was going to become a ghost, I imagine he probably would. But
yeah,
no worries.
Sorry, I'm trying to. Now the next hanging, because we're kind of bouncing around out of order on these, but the next hanging, and this is a botched hanging. Okay, so there's this man of science, and his name is Dr. G. Oliver. Okay, so he's a local physician, and he wanted to test John L. Fat's herring. He wanted to test John L. Fat's herring during his botched execution in 1927. Okay. So Dr. Oliver, he was fascinated by the unusual situation of herring surviving for so long after the hanging. So as the story goes, Dr. Oliver allegedly approached the scene of the execution and suggested that the hanging be delayed so he could study Herring's psychological reactions while the man was still alive. His interest was in observing the effects of hanging on the human body, as it was considered a scientific curiosity at the time. While the exact details of Dr. Oliver's actions remain somewhat unclear, it's widely believed that this suggestion, or something akin to it, caused significant uproar. Herring, after all, was still alive and struggling, which was an unusually long period of time after a hanging. His prolonged suffering raised ethical concerns and questions about the methods of execution used. So, to kind of explain it, so Herring was charged with murder. I actually think we got him written here somewhere. No. Okay. So he was wanted, he was hanged for murder. Okay. The problem with hanging people is at the time of this happening, most hangings, the rope wasn't long enough. It was a short rope or it'd be too long. And so the problem with hanging is you have to have the right length rope or things go wrong. So you want to have it long enough to where when the person drops, their neck snaps and they die. Herring neck did snap and the rope snapped and he fell to the ground. So, like dropped straight through the trapdoor, neck snapped, hit the ground. And he laid there still alive, suffering.
Sheesh.
They were going, and usually what happens in these circumstances is immediately they got a second rope, they throw it up there, they hang them a second time to make sure they're fully dead.
Right.
Oliver did not want them to hang him yet because he wanted to test the effects of hanging.
Oh, geez. Okay.
So because of Herring's death was prolonged due to the botched hanging, so he was still on the ground alive. Guess how long he lived for after the hanging before he finally succumbed to his injuries?
12 hours?
15 minutes.
Oh, okay. Oh, so not very long. Okay.
This makes it one of the most notorious hangings in Florida. So what I want you to have in your head is, okay, so imagine you're walked up to the gallows for a crime and they put the noose around your neck and they drop the trapdoor. And this thing's pretty high. Like this thing isn't like a little small platform on the ground. It's probably like a story tall. The trapdoor drops, you drop, your neck snaps, the rope snaps, you plummet and hit the ground, and you're like gasping for air. You can't breathe, probably. You know, your neck snapped. It's bad. And instead of them pulling you back up, hanging you again to make sure you're executed real quick, this guy named Oliver is like, no. I want to test this. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like if I'm ever hanged, I just would want it to be quick. The thought of still
suffering.
Yeah, suffering is just makes it feel like ants are crawling up my back or something like that. So
there you go. That is the mistreatment. That is the hangings. That is the history. And we're gonna get to the ghost now.
Yep, took us 28 minutes, but
yeah, like a lot of information.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, the background is important because it's like what would attract spiritual forces to a place, right? And it's like, yeah, suffering. And what kind of suffering? Does suffering you just described through the hangings, through the conditions, through the poop bucket and all that other stuff, right? So, you know, all of that lays the groundwork. So
yes, because as we will talk sometimes about ghosts, I don't know if we've mentioned this before, but people believe that like places of deep sorrow, places of tragedy, those are mostly the ones that are being haunted. So getting that, we kind of can move into the hauntings. So this location has been featured on various paranormal TV shows, Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, and as well to this day, if you want to, you can actually book a tour. This is what I did. You can book a tour. I think it was like $80 per person or something like that. And what you do is you show up there at 11 o'clock at night and you basically hang out in the old jail for 3 hours. And the cool thing about it.
Oh, for 3 quarters. Never mind.
3 hours.
Oh, 3 hours. Okay.
3 hours. Yeah. So you hang out there for 3 hours. And so basically you have the ability to kind of go wherever you want, do whatever you need to do. The cool thing is during the day, like the sheriff's office, I think either half of it's open or half of it, or it's fully closed, but like you can go fully in the sheriff's office, explore all around there. Upstairs, let's see, The sheriff's bedroom is usually closed off to the public during the day tours. However, at night you can go in there. You can walk into the solitary confinement room. You can walk anywhere and everywhere. You basically got the whole place to yourself. I mean, there's probably like, I think when we did it, there's probably like 8 people with us. So it wasn't too many people. And it was like enough to where I could have moments by myself in like other rooms away from people.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So I'll kind of give some of the factual stuff, and then I'll kind of tell you guys what I was told on the tour and kind of what I learned. So we'll start off with the first one. They call it the gray ghost. Okay. One of the most frequently reported apparitions is that of a gray-haired ghost wearing a prisoner's uniform. This figure is said to appear near the jail's second floor. Some believe this is the ghost of a former prisoner who was executed or died under mysterious circumstances. Straightforward. There you go.
Gotcha. Okay.
Let's see. So there's also apparently the sound of rattling chains. Some visitors are reporting hearing the sound of chains rattling, which is believed to be the lingering presence of prisoners who were once shackled. They're typically heard at night when the jail is quiet, adding to the eerie atmosphere.
Mine's the chain gangs, right?
So what I'll do is I'll probably like interlude, because the next spirits we have, I can actually interlude a little bit into this. So the next one is the female spirits. So there's apparently female presence is frequently felt in the area where the female prisoners were housed. Many believe this could be the spirit of a woman who died in the jail, possibly due to disease or maltreatment. Some people claim to have seen her walking or felt cold spots in the female section of the jail. When we were on the tour, and Maddie was the one that went there, my wife, because they said the female spirits don't like men. So they probably weren't going to interact with me, but they would interact with the wife.
Man, all these sexist ghosts, man.
Well, maybe Steven can go in there and rizz them up.
What was there was an episode a while ago that we did where there was a ghost that was really into women or something.
Yeah, there was the guy in the barn.
Ah, right.
Over in England, the ancient Ram Inn.
The ancient Ram Inn, right? And did it like blondes or something, or did it just like women in general?
It liked blondes.
Ah, okay. All right, I better protect the blonde from Blue Room and keep her away from that. So
the wailing of lost souls. Several visitors and staff members have reporting hearing disturbing cries and wails, often described as coming from the jail's cells or corridors. It's believed to be the tortured souls of prisoners who endured harsh conditions during their incarceration. Yeah.
Okay.
So next we got the haunted guard tower. It's another hotspot for paranormal activity. People report seeing shadowy figures near their windows or feeling an unsettling presence. The tower, which once overlooked the entire jail, is said to be haunted by a former guard who still keeps watch. So there you go.
Yeah. Do you know if it's the ghost of prison guards in that tower or just other things?
It says guards, so it's like prison guards.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Ghostly guards. I wonder if I'd be more terrifying to encounter a ghostly prisoner or a ghostly prison guard.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are some reports that I don't have it written down here, but some people have reported actually hearing the ghost of Sheriff John Perry.
Oh shoot, that's the 6'6" dude, right?
Yeah, they hear him walking around and stuff.
Weird.
Dude, could you imagine encountering that guy as a ghost?
I was about to say he was sounded pretty scary as a human, so you had to see him as a ghost. That would be terrifying.
There's the ghost of a murderer that's haunted this place.
All right.
One particular well-known story is of a murderer named. You want to guess what his name is?
Dude, I have no idea. What's his
William?
Name? William?
Yeah, apparently I'm a ghost and I'm haunting this place.
I thought you were gonna say like William the something. I don't know.
No, it's just William.
You're William the cowboy.
So this is just William.
This is William the
ghost murderer.
I don't know. Yeah. Anyway.
So apparently he was reportedly hanged in the jail. Visitors and staff have claimed to feel his presence, and one woman even reported being touched by something unseen while touring the facility. There's apparently the apparition of a young child. Some reports claim that a small child's ghost haunts the building. The child, thought to be a former prisoner, is often seen playing in the yard or walking along the cell blocks. Okay. Child spirit, pretty normal. The spirits of the doomed inmates. Many of the hauntings are believed to come from the death row prisoners who were held in jail before being executed. Their tortured and violent deaths are thought to leave behind powerful residual energy that continues to manifest as paranormal activity. So those are the ghosts that I've written down. But there are also reports of other ghosts, some that I've heard of myself. So this is from my notes, but this is now going into my own personal tale. So some other ghosts that are being seen here. There's the mimic. Okay, they say that the mimic mimics the voices of prisoners and makes you think it. Yeah. So these last two guys that I'm fixing to mention about, these last two, to me, I'm like, that's not a ghost, that's a demon. So there's that guy. So he just kind of mimics people, and that's about it. Okay. Then there is the crawler. Okay. So the last bit of information I'm fixing to give you is what truly terrified me when I encountered what I encountered. Okay, so there's this thing called the crawler. You can't see it except on a thermal camera. You know what a thermal camera is? When it shows heat. It is seen on a thermal camera as a black spot, which like a black ball, which, as you know, a black ball is really cold.
Right.
Upon doing this investigation, they actually give you the equipment. They give you EMF readers. They give you thermal cameras. They give you all this tech. Okay. They specifically told us, like the guy that was doing this, he said to us, he says, listen, if you see a black spot on your thermal imaging camera, do not approach it under any circumstances. Don't.
Sheesh.
There were reports that a psychic was like, came to the place, you know how psychics are, like, I feel there's a ghost here, blah, blah, blah. He wanted to experience the crawler and open himself up to it. So he says, lock me in solitary confinement. Solitary confinement, dark room, right? Pitch black. I've been in solitary confinement there. And when that door shuts, it doesn't matter if it's bright outside, it is dark. Like you cannot see your hand in front of your face, kind of dark.
Yeah. Sheesh.
And he said, he apparently told him, lock me in here. I'm going to try to reach out the crawler. He reached out to the crawler, opened himself up to this thing. When he left there, it had psychologically tormented and scarred this man.
Oh my goodness. How long was he there for with that?
I can't remember how long they said, but it wasn't long. I would have to look into that.
In a short amount of time, the crawler just messed him up like that.
Yeah. There is reports, and I didn't put this in my history because I probably could have looked for it to make sure it was factual. There are reports that upstairs in the children's bedroom, there have been reports of an exorcism that happened there in the 40s. Was it the 40s? I think it was the 40s. There was an exorcism anyways up in the children's bedroom.
Okay. Any record of who performed it and why?
Not that I know of.
Okay. But it showed weird stuff's been happening there for a while.
Yeah. So there's been like, let's see. Let me just see if, because like I said, like this was information we were hearing when we came there. Now, could this all be like, just made up to spook us more? Maybe. But yeah. So let's see. I'm trying to figure out if I was trying to see if they actually like had mentioned about it, but I don't know. It could just again be them trying to like amp it up, but that is what I heard was there was an exorcism as well. There was reports. I don't know if this was on one of those tours. I think it was on one of those ghost tours. They had actually told us that there's a man who was upstairs in the child's bedroom, and he was taunting this thing, and he said, "Throw me." It threw him down the stairs.
He told it to throw him.
I don't know if he told it to throw him,
but he got
picked up. This guy got picked up and thrown down some stairs.
Golly. I wonder how many appendages he hit on the way down.
I don't know.
Yeah, you hit your head and gosh. Sheesh.
Yeah. So to kind of tell my encounter or my story, because that's kind of where I'm leading us right now. So we had paid to do this investigation. I think most of the people were in general population. I was the only person. Okay, I was by myself. I was in the sheriff's bedroom. So behind me, so in the sheriff's bedroom, if I'm looking out, there's the window. Okay, behind me is the doorway that leads to the children's bedroom, and in the children's bedroom, there's another doorway that leads out to general population and the stairway. Okay, so behind me is where all this crap has been told I happened. The exorcism, the guy being thrown down the staircase, and then I hear about the crawler. Like I don't know if the crawler did this, but hearing about this crawler ghost. So I'm sitting there, and there's like a desk. Okay, so there's a desk, and it's facing out towards the window. I had an EMF reader, and I sat it down on the table, and I set my phone next to it, and I had a spirit box. Okay, I had the spirit box a little way so it wouldn't mess with the EMF reader. If you don't know what a spirit box is, it scans through like radio frequencies, like it basically scans through radio stations super fast, so where all you have is this white static, and ghosts can use that to talk through. EMF readers, they measure electromagnetic fields, and they kind of, if it goes all the way up red, there might be a ghost nearby, or we'll probably talk about this later on at some point, or you're just accidentally hitting a Wi-Fi box. Steven, you remember that, don't you?
Yeah. Am I getting amnesia right now? No, just kidding.
No. Anyways, so I'm standing there and I'm asking questions. Who are you? Is there anybody here? What's, the usual stuff, My EMF reader, I can't remember what it went to, but it was either a 3 or a 5. Like it spiked. And all I could think in my head is the guy told us, he says, most of the time if this goes off, don't sit there and take a photo in front of you. Turn around, it's behind you. So I want you to get in your head. Your EMF reader is going off. You're told that the ghost is possibly behind you. What's behind me is a doorway to a room that had an exorcism and a guy get thrown down some stairs. I'm terrified. So I grab my phone off the table and I quickly turn around and I snap the picture. And I took another picture. And in the first picture, you see this white ball of light. It was moving upwards. The second photo, it was gone.
Yeah, I mean that's that EMF reader going off, the white ball, like there's definitely some spooky stuff going over there.
Oh, for sure. So that's all I've got for the history and everything, but I do have our chat GPT story of us encountering the ghosts. So I'll do that.
In addition to the to your personal story that you just had. So yeah, cool. All right, man. Chat GPT it up.
I am thinking about possibly going back to see if I can capture something else. So I'll let you guys know. Maybe I'll do that too. Maybe I'll be like Steven and I'll go do a ghost hunt at one of these places. Maybe not the jail. Might do someplace new for me, but do like a little ghost tour and see if I can capture some stuff. And we'll discuss it here on the podcast. All right, here we go. So this is the story, The Hauntings of Old St. Augustine Jail. The old St. Augustine Jail loomed in the dim glow of the Florida moon, its rusted bars and crumbling red brick walls whispering tales of misery and death. The air was thick with humidity, but despite the warm night, a deep, unnatural chill clung to the building like a ghostly presence. Stephen checked the settings on his camera, while Will adjusted his flashlight. This place has seen its fair share of horrors, tortures, hangings, murder. Not exactly a peaceful retirement home. Will smirked. Yeah, I imagine the Yelp reviews ain't great. Stephen didn't laugh. People say the spirits here don't just show themselves, they interact. Will raised an eyebrow. Interact how? Stephen shut his camera case. Scratches, voices, people getting touched. Will's smirk faltered. Okay, so maybe we just observed tonight. With a final glance at each other, they stepped inside. The wooden floor groaned beneath their boots as they walked through the narrow corridors, the iron bars of the cells standing like skeletal remains of a tortured past. The air inside was stifling, thick with the scent of rust, old wood, and something else. Something stale. Stephen whispered as they passed the empty cells, his voice barely above a breath. Some prisoners died of disease, others were hanged right in the courtyard. The sheriff here, Joe Perry, was brutal, treated inmates like animals. Will swept his flashlight over a row of cells, pausing when he saw something scrawled into the wall, deep gouges like claw marks. You think the prisoners did this? Stephen crouched to get a better look. The marks were erratic, desperate, human. Then a whisper, soft, hushed, but unmistakable. Will stiffened. You heard that, right? Stephen nodded. The whisper came again, just ahead. A low, rasping voice. Get out. A sudden bang echoed through the jail like a cell door slamming shut. Both men spun around. The corridor behind them was empty. Stephen swallowed. That wasn't the wind. Will exhaled slowly. Nope, definitely not. They pressed forward, stepping into the sheriff's quarters where Joe Perry had once ruled with an iron fist. His desk remained untouched, a thick layer of dust covering old papers and an inkwell. On the wall, a black and white photograph of the man himself watched them with hollow eyes. Then, a sudden creak. The chair behind the desk shifted slightly. Stephen's breath caught. Did you see that? Will nodded, his voice low. Yup. The air grew thick, heavy. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway. Will raised his flashlight, the beam shaken slightly. The footsteps came closer, the sound of heavy boots on wooden planks. Then they stopped, right outside the door. Silence. Will swallowed hard. I really don't want to open that door. Stephen took a breath and reached for the handle. He pulled it open. The hallway was empty. Then, bang! A cell door down the corridor slammed shut on its own. Stephen flinched. Will cursed under his breath. Then the footsteps started again, not just in the hallway, inside the room. A sharp, ice-cold breeze rushed past them, making Stephen stumble back. Will gasped as something unseen brushed against his arm. Then, a voice. Deep, commanding. You don't belong here. The room felt wrong, like the walls were pressing in. Stephen grabs Will's arm. We need to go, now. They bolted down the hall, past the cells, past the shadows lurking in the corners of their vision. They are buzzed with unseen energy, whispers trailing after them as they ran. As they reached the entrance, Will glanced back. For just a moment, standing in the dim glow of the corridor, a tall figure watched them, dressed in an old sheriff's uniform. His face shadowed, but his eyes burned. And then the doors burst open and the night swallowed them whole. Back in the car, both men sat in silence, their hearts pounding. Will finally broke the silence, broke the quiet. Okay, so that was definitely the sheriff. Stephen nodded, still gripping his camera. Yeah. Will exhaled. Think we got enough evidence for the podcast? Stephen let out a nervous laugh. More than enough. As they drove off, Stephen glanced in the rearview mirror. For just a second, he thought he saw a shadow standing in the doorway of the jail, watching them leave and smiling.
That was the sheriff, man. When the sheriff showed up, I was just like, oh, shoot.
Here we go.
Here we go. 6'6", 300-pound linebacker ghost.
Dude,
about to come and tell me to get out of jail.
I definitely think, like, I'm gonna tell you guys, like, we're obviously planning at some point for a Patreon for us to travel, and actually go to locations and ghost hunt and hunt cryptids. Obviously, the plan is, and I'll probably will discuss it with Stephen, but I think the plan is, just so that way, like, we could get up to date with those to where we're able to, because our plan is to travel 1 week out of the month to kind of go. But what I want us to do is for like a month or two, just me and him travel and go to these haunted locations to try to get those episodes out. So we have like a stockpile of them to release. I think the St. Augustine Jail is going to be one of the first places we go.
Yeah, it's not too far from us. And so, yeah, definitely would be a good place to go to.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. And anything else, Steve, before we leave?
Yeah, don't end up in a prison with a 6'6", 300-pound sheriff linebacker, and especially, don't drop the soap. All right, especially around the crawler. But okay, anyway.
Okay. All right. You heard it here, guys. Be safe and don't drop the soap.